Well, I don't know about you guys, but it has been, Mike, I know that you've participated in this some, but what a couple of weeks it has been in pro modified drag racing. And this is, to me, again, this is why this class is so hot. This is why the fan base is what it is and growing like it is. We talked about this briefly last week, but obviously there's been further developments. We kind of saw the other shoe fall where the PDRA and the IHRA both made their parity adjustments. It has been met with all sorts of thoughts and feelings, and I felt like it would be just important for us to at least bring folks up to speed, dish on this a little bit. Mike, we've had a lot of, long winding conversations about this topic and parity, what the future of pro modified looks like. But I will tell you, just to kind of lead this part of the conversation off, I know there's obviously been some resistance to this, right? There's been some commentary on social media where people, feel like this is counterproductive or it's not helpful. But I can't help but feel like conversation around this particular brand of drag racing, whether it's rules, racers, event, whatever, it's not a bad thing. I mean, it's kind of that classic, there's no such thing as bad publicity. I would argue that. You guys know that I don't necessarily feel that way personally all the time. But when it comes to this, something that is, the rules are a part of all sports, right? It is something that is talked about openly. So should we, is there an argument to be made to not be talking about this? I'm just curious.
I don't think so, man. This, like we talk about, that pro mod is unique in that this is it's going to be an ongoing battle forever. Anytime you've got multiple combinations in one class, you're going to have this. And we've had it since the start of pro mod. So it's not a new thing. I think normally we didn't have the internet. We didn't have social media. People weren't as outspoken. We're seeing some guys say some stuff now that have always been quiet in their careers and start to come out. You look at like the Boost and Bullshit show, they've got a podcast now, they're doing a show and they're talking about it. So a lot more people have platforms, I feel like, to voice these concerns in favor or against what's happening. And I think it's a good thing. And it's certainly nothing new. You talk about stick and ball sports. I get alerts every day. We're like going into the NBA playoffs. Tanking is a big deal this year. Teams are like pretty much openly throwing games and losing games to improve their draft position for next year, because it's been proven like that's the best way to build your team. Being in the middle and just kind of floating is not the way to do it. You need to be really bad and then get a top draft pick. And now the NBA is working to implement new rules to help prevent that. So anytime you've got something like this going on, the rules aren't locked in stone from the beginning of time, and they're never going to change. It's always fluid, and it's always something that's going to be there unless you split the class and you have, and that's essentially, it's kind of an interesting thing to think about as well. I wanted to mention this before we wrap that up. Pro Boost really is one of the few classes where you do have multiple combinations running together. And essentially it's kind of always been a screw blown class, right? Then the centrifugal came on. Turbos, I believe, are still allowed in that class as well, but they've gone by the wayside. So it becomes a class that has multiple power adders, and you're always going to be facing this until it becomes one or the other. Pro Nitrous doesn't have this issue. Usually when you make an effort to split the class, it's because you only want one power adder, and they've been able to balance the two, or one's been so dominant that the other hasn't mattered. But now that they both matter and they're both kind of trading blows back and forth as far as who's dominant, it's become a very hot topic. So I think that is what is unique in this situation versus what we've seen in the past.
I can't argue that at all. And I think that these things need to be discussed in the open, because if I had to really say my piece on this, I would say that Pro Mod doesn't have a parity problem as much as it has a transparency problem. And probably underneath that, it has a communication problem. Like, I've spent the last several days, I would argue like the last several weeks, on the phone nonstop with racers, crew chiefs, tuners for hire, chassis shops. I've been in the room with these guys. I've been face to face with many of them. And I think what no one is really willing to say out loud that I feel has driven a lot of this is people who will air out their opinions on Facebook or air out their opinions in the pits at a racetrack, but won't go on the record. like for instance, I've had multiple drivers that, maybe said some stuff on social media, but then told me that they didn't want to make, a public statement and like sign their name to it and have it published by Drag Illustrated, and really make their case. And I think that's interesting. And I've also got guys and gals, racers in general, who perpetually round down, right? Sometimes significantly. Like if the real number, just as an example, is 400, they're going to look me in my face, right in my eyes, and tell me that it's 250. And I think that's driving a lot of the parity problem. I mean, we've seen poker being played. We've seen guys, get lost. I mean, because there's a case that can be made that we saw the record set in Pro Boost 2 years ago with the cars 30 pounds heavier, right? Like where did those 2-300s go? Right? Yeah. Like where did those 2-300s go?
Aspect of it as well. And you're going to have guys, I see a lot of guys saying, we need a committee and we need to get everybody that's a representative of every combination in a room with computers and share data and come up with exactly the perfect rule set based off all that. But even if those people do come to the table with that data, they're going to go right to work making it better once they leave that room, or they've already got something better that they're not showing you yet. It's never, I think you're giving.
They're still going to be out for their combo.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, do you think the best tuner in the world or the number one guy in the world is going to show up with it and lay all of his data out for everyone to see and then let everybody make decisions based off of that? It sounds great, but that's the reason why you don't typically have committees, and it's got to be a third party that doesn't have really a dog in
any
the
skin in the game
to make those decisions.
And I think that's what
you kind of have to keep these. We always say, don't let the inmates run the asylum, and don't let you're not going to let a biased individual that's participating be able to do that. Captain Lucky might just say Jason's name. He always says that. That is a big point that Jason made on his show on Monday, and that is something we've heard from like Cam Hensley and the Gustafson crew. And they're asking for more transparency from the rule makers and want to be more involved in it. And I do think that maybe there is a balance to be had there, but there's kind of a reason why you always try to have a really highly qualified tech committee, and why you always want to sort of maintain neutrality. And almost as a promoter or track or sanctioning body, you've got to dictate to the racers that this is how it's going to be done. Because if you let them dictate, that goes awry really, really quickly, despite their best efforts. It's because racers are going to do racer things, and that's just the way it works.
And that is, I'm not saying there shouldn't be a representative, perhaps, from the racing, from the involved competitors. But the underlying thing here is we cannot fix what nobody will honestly measure. Right. I mean, literally, I've had back phone calls in the last 5 days where I would get one take on a situation and get a completely different take on the exact same situation 30 minutes later, and then another take on the situation 30 minutes later. There's a lot of inter-team competition, which is what you want, right? And I think that the honest take is that there is an argument to be made on every side. I don't know that this is like a good guy, bad guy type of story. What we're really seeing, in my opinion, I mean, it's no different than like space and going to the moon. We're seeing the product, the result of new product technology and rapid iteration running headlong into a somewhat frozen platform, right? I mean, that's what we're seeing. It wasn't that long ago that 5 years ago, centrifugals didn't have a seat at the table in NHRA Pro Mod. I mean, they were introduced in 2019, right? And they've gone from 0 to 100 real freaking quick, right? Jose Gonzalez won the championship in 2021, 5 years ago. Now, the centrifugal supercharger program is the de facto go-to thing in Pro Mod. And I think that Pro Charger and Hearts Charger are in this live R&D race, new wheels, new housings, faster iteration cycles. The product is getting better in real time. And the screw charger on the other end of the table is a sealed unit, SFI certified, don't touch it. And there are reports that some of these blowers are getting massaged, but it's not like an outward function. It's not a product you can buy. It's not something that's being marketed. It's not readily available to everyone. I'll tell you, at the Winter Series, Mike, I had multiple screw-blown drivers come up to me and tell me, man, we made some really good runs, but we just don't have a good enough blower. Said it to my face. We just don't have a good enough blower to run with the guys who do have one. And that, to me, is a problem. And I think, moving into what actions were taken, and this is not a shot. I understand, like, everybody's trying to do the best they can, but where I land is this feels like a horsepower problem, really more than a weight problem. One of the things that I look at a lot is the economics of this, and I've got racers that are showing up as an example to the Winter Series with 3 or 4 spare bullets under the bench, spare engines, right? Then, and going through them, right, routinely. I mean, a lot of these screw blower racers don't go to the track unless they've got 1 or 2 complete engines ready to go, because they know they're going to have to run it hard enough, to hang and to run at the front, that there's likely going to be some carnage and attrition. And to me, I don't know that adding weight to the centrifugal cars to slow them down is going to solve that carnage and attrition problem. Right now, granted, I do think there's some questions that exist, like we talked about, some runs being made a couple of years ago that we've not seen be consistently repeated. Definitely an issue and something that needs to be explored. But I think a case could be made that, there's a pocket of racers that are so worried about what's happening over here, right, that maybe they're not as focused as they once were, or maybe they're not as honed in or harmoniously, don't have that harmony in their program that they did when they were laser focused on it, because they weren't worried about, some competing conversation. But I can't help but feel like a move to give the screw cars more power is probably going to be the answer. I think we're going to run out of room to move weight. I think we're going to run out of runway when it comes to just adding weight. And I think it's a real detriment to the centrifugal supercharger racers who've invested, a tremendous amount of time testing, made gazillion runs to get that platform to where it is and to get that combination to where it is. I just feel like it could perhaps be answered more easily with some overdrive, with some horsepower. We know the screw charged Hemi. I mean, there's guys, Jason Scruggs was running 125 over, went 221 miles an hour in the 8th mile at the IHRA season opener. Like there's clearly power, a tremendous amount of power to be had there. There's a world of data available to running those combinations at a higher overdrive. And I just can't help but feel, my personal take, not forecasting the future, just my personal take, that this feels like more of a horsepower problem than it is a weight problem. And we've seen what happens when this attrition gets so high. How many racers did we see give up on the nitro stuff, Mike? Because of the attrition, because of the amount of work that was required. A lot of these centrifugal
guys are former nitrous racers. And so it's been the combination of choice for guys that have made the move away. There's really, I would be hard pressed to think of any pro nitrous racers that have moved to a screw blower. Like, that is kind of I'm a dyed in the wool supercharger guy type of combination. The centrifugal has really kind of bridged that gap. It's been like a gateway for these nitrous guys converting over. And so, yeah, like you said, that's something that is a unique position for these guys. We talked about that last week as well. We'll see where it goes. I think the idea is we all want to land on a unified rule set. And I would love that, but I don't know that we're there yet. And I think that PDRA has an objective. IHRA has an objective. We have an objective. At the
Midwest has an objective.
Midwest has an objective.
Everybody
running
that's
in different parts
races
of the country, in different air, on different tracks. We especially are trying to balance more combinations in with the centrifugal and screw blowers. That presents another challenge in a different direction that we have to look at things. So while the idea is to get everybody in a room and come up with one unified rule set and go from there, and I would love that. I would love if that was realistic, and maybe it will be in the near future. But right now, this season, I think we're going to see a bunch of different takes on the same concept and see how it plays out. And then when it comes to us in the winter, we're going to have to make a decision based on what we've seen throughout the year and go from there, which is kind of how we've done it up to this point. But we're on the outside looking in, but this is not our platform right now. It's PDRA, IHRA, NHRA, Midwest season time. So we get to sit back and kind of watch how this plays out and try to take it and run with it from there for the Winter Series.
I mean, here's where I land by every account that I've been given. And this is another thing that I think is a superpower, going back to the original diagnosis of this being a transparency and a communication problem. Committees, all these things can be talked about and I think explored, but a committee that doesn't communicate and isn't transparent is going to produce the exact same problems, right? You're going to have the exact same issues. And what I think is important is communication. Like, I've picked the phone up. I've been on the phone with these guys asking questions because admittedly, I need their input. I want their input. And the people that I've talked to who do this for a living have told me a centrifugal supercharged Hemi, a pushing 600 cubic inches, the latest, greatest Harts charger, latest, greatest Pro charger, 140 millimeter unit is making somewhere between 250 and 400 horsepower more than the latest, greatest, state-of-the-art, 92% overdrive screw-blown Heavy. Pick whatever number you want in that range, Mike, 250 for 400, 300. Let's just say 300. We ain't going to fix that with 50 pounds. It's just noise, right? I mean, we're not going to fix 300 horsepower with 50 pounds. We're not going to fix it with 60. We're going to create other problems. And I think that we've got to get to the root, like speaking, to your point that everybody's kind of serving different purposes here and, chasing different things. Dude, what I'm chasing is parity and preserving a combination. We've seen this movie before, bruh. We've seen it. We watched it happen to Nitrous Pro Mod. The carnage, the destruction, the cost, the effort, and then the exodus, right? I mean, Nitrous racing didn't stop because, or didn't slow down the way that it has because it wasn't fun or badass. It died off or slowed down because something more reliable, more powerful, more raceable showed up next to it. And if we don't pay attention, the Screwblower Pro Mod is on the same trajectory. And I think that I had a conversation and Turbo. I had a conversation with a chassis builder today that told me that they have had multiple cars that were mid-construction. There was a couple examples of cars that have already been to paint and body, brand new Pro Mods that were designed, built to be screw charger cars, where the chassis shop gets a phone call and says, "Hey, I want to switch to a centrifugal."
I've seen it happen and actually been involved with it at Victory Vinyl with some of these wraps and some of the cars over at Modern Racing. Brand new car, never been touched, screw blown car, converted to Pro Charger or Harts charger before it ever rolled out for the Winter Series. I think you know which one I'm talking about, and so I've seen it, and I've seen multiple other cars mid construction make that change as well. And I've seen cars over there being built. Guys have both combinations. There's some guys that we know have both combinations, like Justin Bond. You're going to see more of that. There's several other teams that are going that route as well, based on the weather, based on the rules. They're just going to have both and roll one or the other out.
I mean, that's how much movement this debate is creating. And people are throwing away time and money mid-project to get on the right side of where they think this whole thing is heading. The market's already voting. We're not in a hypothetical conversation. I mean, the market is already casting their vote with their wallet. And to me, and it also slows the whole process down when a car is getting ready to go to final assembly and then has to be sent back into the shop to have, a hole in the front end patched up and a bunch of things changed.
Yeah, those cowl sections of 69 Camaros have been in high demand because there's been a lot of screw blower holes filled and then holes knocked out of the grills. I mean, I've seen it literally over and over and over the winter.
I mean, it's just and to me, like I said, I think it's a super interesting debate. I've heard a lot of talk about boost, the screws, obviously these are, kind of arbitrary numbers, 46 to 47, whatever. In that range, I've had reports of various things. I've seen data that say various things, but in that range compared to, the centrifugals making in some cases north of 60 pounds of boost pressure. But it's also one of the things that's not being discussed is how much heat the centrifugal supercharger makes. Mike, I was telling you about this earlier in the week, that it's like, you've got a screw blower making 45, let's just say that for the sake of round numbers, boost at 120 degree inlet air temperature versus a centrifugal making 60 PSI at 400 plus degrees. I mean, if you want like a receipt, lower pressure, cooler intake charge can carry more oxygen than a high pressure, hotter one. I mean, it's just physics. right? And the boost number kind of oversimplifies the physics that are at play. So I think that the whole thing, perhaps there are some people looking in the wrong place. And at the end of the day, we're at a point where we've seen a significant horsepower increase from one combination, and we're probably going to need to find a way to match that with another combination. And knowing that it's there with nothing but a fucking pulley, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
To me,
I mean, that's the smart thing, right?
We're a pulley
yeah.
away from probably narrowing that gap. And
At least for the screws, and the turbo guys are still, but we don't know, right, with the turbo guys, because you still got one car that was out there tearing it up during the winter series. Do you think it's a little bit early? I mean, we were basically one race in, or 1 weekend of racing.
It's going to be interesting. What's going to be interesting is that they,
these guys tested all winter, and then you're going to throw some weight on them, right here off the bat without. I mean, we haven't seen, the sample size isn't that big. I get it. I mean, it looks like that they're dominant, right? So, but it does seem awful early for it.
It definitely felt like a little bit of an immediate reaction. I think that there are some things like
it's going to cause some weird stuff for this next event, because they've got to go in and complete the previous event at the previous weight for those semifinalists, and then add weight back on them to compete in that race. And that's going to be weird. So yeah, there's a lot of weird, it's going to be an adjustment for sure. And then you start tearing stuff up, you shake the tires, and you've got all this weight hung all over the place, and it's going to cause a lot of things, a lot of bars to break. That,
I mean, dude, that's I think the structural problem with the weight only fix is that we're running out of room. Some of these cars are already pretty damn heavy, and I don't know about you guys, but like, I care about the men and women behind the wheel of these things. I see them as an extension of my family. There are many of them I've watched grow up or had a long-term 20-year relationship with, and I don't know that I can sleep at night getting these cars heavier and heavier and heavier while they seemingly go faster and faster and faster. I mean, it's not uncommon to see a 220 mile an hour, 8th mile pass. You start getting north, encroaching 2,700 pounds or beyond that. Yeah, that's a whole lot of weight.
That's life. That's really life, Wes. We we get heavier as life goes on.
Yeah, we start breaking stuff.
I'm down 12 pounds. So
whatever.
I am, dog. I'm on it. Thanks. Appreciate it.
No problem, man.
I really appreciate it. But and I'll just, we'll kind of wrap this part up. We've got our first guest in the green room, excited to dive into this conversation. And we can actually probably talk a little bit about some of this, just the cost of racing with our first guest. But, I think that I get it. I see it from both sides. But when you look at preserving something and you will look at longevity and long-term sustainability, I think some additional horsepower is probably going to be not weight off a combination, not weight on a combination, power on. And I think a lot of our desire, Mike, specifically yours and I and John Sears and everybody that's been involved with our efforts over the years. I mean, there's a lot of people that we've leaned on, right? I think of Roger Conley, Chris Bell, Justin Elks. There's a slew of people that we have leaned on that have there's a ton of people. I mean, that have been part of these conversations, and we've had a lot of conversations with, and we've used as sounding boards. But I think that we're in a point right now that needs power. We need to bring some power. And I think that, what I was going to say is a lot of the decisions we were making, Michael, were rooted in trying to keep nitrous cars competitive. Yeah. And, that's a conversation for another day. But I think that we may have, we may be running up on the end of that reality. And I don't know how long you can slow down 80, 100, 150 guys to try to keep them close with the last of the Mohicans. So
you guys tried. I'll give you that. I mean, you tried for a long time. Yeah.
We have sure as hell tried, man. It's to me, this shit's fun to talk about. I mean, Mike actually questioned my sanity earlier in the week. He's like, dude, what you've had like 100 phone calls about this? I'm like, yeah, man, but I just want to know now. I want to know now. And I want to be gaining data. I mean, I've recorded 50 phone calls in the last week because I've told everybody that I've talked to, like, hey, I'm recording this and I'm going to have a breakdown of it because I'm going to hold you to what you told me is true. Because that is one of the issues that we have seen cause problems in Pro Mod for well over a decade, several decades, I would argue. That it's like there's some poker being played. And I don't think that the Pro Charger and the Harts Charger are wildly sandbagging. I really don't. I mean, I talked to some of these team owners who run both. I've had them show me data. I mean, a lot of the claims of manipulating timing and all these things and riding the dots, riding an engine plot or a drive shaft plot all the way down the track, I think some of that's overblown. I think that there's definitely some instances of that, I'm sure. But these guys are trying to fucking go fast, dude. They want all the power in that thing. I talked to racers who are saying they've got it all on as much power as it'll make 1 second into the run, 1-2 into the run. Yeah. So, I mean, after that point, it's about survivability. You know what I mean? It's about making it to the finish line and, you know, and not tearing up a bunch of stuff. So,